Imagination plays an essential role in Ibn Arabi's ontology. It is seen as the creative source of manifestation, the very cause of our existence, and the powerful intermediary that enables us to remain in constant contact with Al-Haq. For Ibn Arabi, imagination is such an essential cognitive instrument that one who does not know the status of imagination is totally devoid of knowledge. Imagination at issue here is not the same as fantasy. While the creative power of imagination derives from its ontological privileges, fantasy is an exercise of thought without foundation in nature.
In this video, we'll discuss Ibn Arabi's view on imagination as a creative power, especially its role and character in human being. If you like this video, please like and share. You can also help me out monetarily via PayPal or Patreon. Your monetary support does mean the world to me. Thank you so much for your support.
Ibn Arabi begins his exposition on his ontological hierarchy by outlining three fundamental forms of existence that are essential to understanding the existence of the world. The first is absolute being, al-wujud al-mutlaq, which refers to the unlimited existence of God, self-sustaining and independent of anything else. On the other hand, there is absolute non-being, al-adamul mutlaq, which entirely lacks existence and cannot stand on its own. However, between existence and non-existence, there is something that acts both as a separator and a mediator. Ibn Arabi calls this barzakh, which literally means isthmus, or a bridge linking two distinct realms. Barzakh is not merely an empty space between existence and non-existence. Rather, it is an intermediary domain that contains archetypal forms, permanent entities, the fundamental principles of all possible existence. We have discussed this specific topic in detail on another video. Please check it out first, which is attached above. Ibn Arabi sees the barzakh, or isthmus, as the key to how the world comes into existence. This in-between realm plays a crucial role in creation by connecting and separating absolute being and absolute non-being. Without it, the world would remain only a possibility. The barzakh allows potential existence to become real, much like a bridge that transforms an idea into reality. In this way, Ibn Arabi describes the world as a child, born from the union of absolute being and absolute non-being, made possible through the creative function of the barzakh.
Ibn Arabi sees a fundamental pattern in the process of creation, which he believes applies to all existence. This pattern is based on two key ideas: triplicity, the relationship of three elements, and quadrature, the relationship of four elements.
The three main elements in his system are absolute being, absolute non-being, and the barzakh, the isthmus. However, the barzakh plays a dual role. It connects and separates the other two, making the idea of four elements present, though not immediately visible. This hidden quadrature is what makes the system dynamic and productive. To explain this concept, Ibn Arabi compares it to logical reasoning, specifically syllogisms. In a basic syllogism, there are three clear parts: two premises and a conclusion. For example, major premise: every animal has a body. Minor premise: a human is an animal. Conclusion: therefore, a human has a body. Here, the two premises represent absolute being and absolute non-being, while the conclusion represents the world, which is born from their interaction. However, there is a hidden fourth element that makes this process work, that is, the concept of animality. The word animal appears in both premises, serving as the barzakh that links them. This mirrors how the Barzakh in Ibn Arabi's cosmology allows creation to emerge from the interplay of existence and non-existence. In this way, triplicity, three distinct elements, is openly visible in the reasoning process, while quadrature, four elements including the hidden connector, is subtly present but crucial to making the system function. In addition, Ibn Arabi views the manifested world as having three levels: the higher, the lower, and the intermediary. The higher world, Alam al-Ghaib, is the unseen realm of spiritual beings, angelic forms, and abstract meanings. In contrast, the lower world, Alam al-Shahada, is the physical realm of material bodies, sensory experiences, and tangible forms. In this lower world, things are perceived through sight, while in the higher world, they are grasped through inner insight.
Just as absolute being and non-absolute being are connected and separated by the barzakh, the isthmus, these two worlds, the spiritual and the physical, are also linked by an intermediary realm.
Ibn Arabi calls this the world of imagination, Alamul Khayal. He states that the isthmus between the higher and lower worlds is none other than this realm of imagination. However, according to his hierarchy, there are actually two barzakhs, one that mediates between absolute being and absolute non-being, and another that mediates between the spiritual and physical realms. The first is of a higher order, which Ibn Arabi calls the Barzakh al-Barazik, the isthmus of all isthmuses. This leads to the question, if the isthmus is the world of imagination, Alamul Khayal, could there be different levels of imagination corresponding to different existential realms? Ibn Arabi's answer is complex, but he identifies three distinct levels of imagination. First, absolute imagination, Khayal Mutlaq, the highest level, corresponding to the higher isthmus. This is the highest and most fundamental level of imagination connected to the divine. It is the source from which all imaginative realities emerge. Second, detached imagination, Khayal Munfasil, an all-encompassing imagination corresponding to the lower isthmus. This level is independent of individual human minds. It is an autonomous realm of imagination that exists on its own, linked to divine creativity. Third, attached imagination, Khayal Mutasil, the imagination that exists within human consciousness, acting as an intermediary between the physical body and the spiritual realm. This is the imagination we experience as humans, where we mentally picture things separate from their physical forms. It is called attached because it is tied to the human soul and cannot exist without it. Through this framework, Ibn Arabi presents imagination not merely as a mental function, but as an essential bridge between different levels of existence.
Ibn Arabi gives imagination a complex and multi-layered role in his philosophy. It is not just an intermediary realm, barzakh, that connects different levels of existence, but also has a creative function.
This means that imagination is not only a bridge between realities, but also plays an active role in shaping them. To understand imagination in Ibn Arabi's philosophical system, we must separate its function as a barzakh from its role as a creative force. Henri Corbin explains that attached imagination depends on detached imagination, just as human creativity is a reflection of divine creativity. Detached imagination exists independently as the realm where all forms originate, while attached imagination is the human ability to visualize and understand these forms. Ibn Arabi even describes the world itself as a product of divine imagination, God imagining the universe into being. Put differently, detached imagination is the imagination of God, the divine act of envisioning the world where all of creation exists as an idea within the divine mind. In contrast, Attached imagination is the human ability to picture and conceptualize things that already exist, brought into being by God's creative imagination. What humans imagine is merely a reflection of this higher, divine imagination. In essence, human imagination depends on divine imagination and is simply a way of participating in it. Furthermore, divine imagination, detached imagination, is eternal and independent, while human imagination, attached imagination, is temporary and depends on the divine. Our ability to imagine is merely a participation in the greater imaginative power of God. Ibn Arabi maintains that human imagination is a temporary and ever-changing presence, and he divides it into two types: dreaming and imagining. Dreaming happens involuntarily, while imagining is something we do consciously. When we imagine, we use memory to recall images we have seen and a creative faculty to combine them into new forms. This idea of imagination is similar to how many traditional Muslim philosophers understand it. They believe imagination is the ability to capture the images of things we see, recall them even when they are no longer in front of us, and even create new images by mixing different elements. Imagination was often compared to a subtle, almost weightless substance that holds these images once they have been separated from their physical forms. Because these images are no longer tied to physical matter, imagination can combine them freely in new ways. For example, a person can imagine a camel standing on top of a palm tree, a bird with 4 legs, or a donkey with a human head. This creative ability to break apart familiar forms and rearrange them into something new is the foundation of artistic expression. However, Ibn Arabi emphasizes that even the most imaginative creations are always built from elements that have been perceived by the senses in some way. Human imagination cannot create something completely out of nothing. Rather, it reshapes and recombines things we have already encountered.
Even when we imagine fantastical creatures like half man, half horse, the separate images of a man and a horse are not entirely new creations. They are taken from the real world and merged in our minds. This means that our imagination is always connected to the physical world, drawing inspiration from the things we have experienced through our senses.
Since human imagination can connect with the world of detached imagination, the realm of potential existence, it has the ability to create an endless variety of images. Nevertheless, because human imagination is tied to the physical world, it can only work with a limited set of elements taken from sensory experience. This means that, while our imagination can generate countless new forms, it does so using a finite pool of raw materials. A simple example in this context would be how a person imagines a flying horse. Human imagination, being limited to sensory experiences, takes familiar elements, like a horse and wings from a bird, and combines them into a new form that does not exist in reality. While this flying horse has no direct counterpart in the physical world, it is still possible within the realm of detached imagination, where all potential forms exist. However, unlike divine imagination, which brings forth structured and meaningful creations into existence, human imagination can only rearrange known elements into new, but often impractical or fantastical forms. In contrast, the divine imagination, which encompasses the entire domain of detached imagination, is limitless. Compared to God's infinite creative power, human imagination is insignificant. Yet, despite the infinite possibilities within divine imagination, the forms that actually manifest in the world follow specific and structured patterns. This raises an interesting question. If human imagination can create endless images, including those that have real counterparts and those that do not, what is the significance of imaginary forms that have no real existence? For example, What is the value of picturing a flying horse if it remains only a possibility and does not correspond to any real archetype? Ibn Arabi describes 4 levels of existence as follows. First, existence in reality, al-wujud al-aini. This is when something exists physically and can be perceived by the senses. For example, a real apple sitting on a table. We can see, touch, and taste it. Second, existence in the mind, al-wujud al-dihni. This is when something exists as a thought or an image in the mind. For example, when we close our eyes and imagine an apple, even though there is no physical apple in front of us. Third, existence in speech, al-wujud al-lafzi. This is when something exists as spoken words. For example, saying the word apple aloud. The actual apple is not present, but people understand what we mean. Fourth, existence in writing, al-wujud al-raqmi. This is when something exists in written form. For example, the word apple written on paper or a screen. It represents the apple, but is not the apple itself. Quote, mental existence is the known being imagined in the soul according to what it is in its reality. Nevertheless, if the conceived image does not conform to reality, that would not be an existence of the known in the mind.
According to Ibn Arabi, imagination is only valid when it aligns with reality. If an imagined form corresponds to a real possibility in the realm of detached imagination, it is the divine storehouse of all possible forms, then it is considered part of mental existence, wujud al-dhihni. Otherwise, it is simply a false or misleading fantasy.
Ibn Arabi explains that the world of detached imagination, God's imagination, where all possible realities exist, acts as a guide for attached imagination, human imagination. This guidance ensures that human imagination does not turn into mere fantasy but remains connected to deeper truths. Human imagination can either be a valuable source of knowledge when it aligns with the true possibilities found in detached imagination, or a corrupt fantasy when it creates things that have no real foundation. Ibn Arabi warns that an ignorant person is someone who believes in or speaks about things they have imagined, even when those things have no true existence beyond their own thoughts. If an imagined form has no deeper reality supporting it, it disappears the moment the person stops thinking or talking about it. However, Ibn Arabi also acknowledges that human imagination is always shaped by archetypes, the fundamental patterns of existence. Even when people create something new in their imagination, its basic components must come from things that already exist in some form. For example, if someone imagines a winged horse, the idea of a horse and the idea of wings both have real archetypes in the world. But if someone imagines something that has no connection to any existing archetypes, it would be completely meaningless. It would represent non-existence rather than reality. Ibn Arabi uses a metaphor. If an imagined thing has no real foundation in the world of archetypes, it is like a child only with a mother without a father, something created only by the person's mind without a deeper principle supporting its existence. Let's take another example. Imagine a flying fish. This is a valid imaginative form because both fish and flight exist in reality. Even though no specific flying fish, like a bird-fish hybrid, may exist in nature, its basic components have real archetypes, so it has a fatherly principle. Now, imagine something like a square circle. This is an invalid or insignificant imaginative form because a shape cannot be both perfectly square and perfectly circular at the same time. There is no real archetype or deeper reality that supports this idea. In this case, the imagination is purely personal, with no external foundation, so it has only a motherly principle, meaning it exists only in the person's mind and disappears as soon as they stop thinking about it.
In summary, Ibn Arabi maintains that true imagination must be rooted in deeper realities, while pure fantasy without any real archetype is insignificant and fleeting. Thank you so much for watching. My special thanks goes to Team Arus. See you.